There's one thing that I really wanted to do that we've had a lot of emails about. I really wanted to separate the person from the politician. So not from Premier McGuinty, but from the standpoint of Dalton, the man who owns a dog, who's grown up with dogs all his life.
Yep.
So obviously in Ontario, there's obviously a lot of issues and controversy that people have with the Pitt Bull ban. So as a dog owner yourself, and not as a politician, how is it for you when people approach you and people talk to you about that when you're walking your dog, and some people are upset, and I mean people have different versions, and obviously as a politician you understand why people are upset, and they look at you for guidance for that and responsibility.
In my riding, and there were folks there with a couple of Pit Bulls, and there was a huge attachment to those pets. I understand that. There's a special, very special relationship between people and their pets, and we should only, with great reluctance, want to interfere with that. But I think public safety trumps everything. That's the way I see it. And I speak first and foremost just as a dad.
Yeah. Right. As a dog owner, have you ever had issues with Pit Bulls?
I've never personally had issues with Pit Bulls. I have, I think, like all dog owners, especially when you're in an off-leash setting, I have had, my dog chased by a very aggressive dog. Yeah. I think that as a dog owner, I have a higher responsibility, which I never lose sight of. I'm a dad.
Yeah.
And I want my kids to be safe. And public safety is something that I'm very concerned about as a parent. So, so whether you're looking to ensure that you're taking the necessary reasonable steps when it comes to protecting your kids. So whether that's making sure they have a helmet on when they're riding a bicycle, whether it's making sure they look both ways before they cross the street, whether it's making sure that we have enough police to look out for dangerous people. It's also making sure that pets, specifically pets which have been bred by people for, in order to enhance certain qualities like aggressivity, imperviousness to pain, incredible jaw strength. All those kind of things come to play when you're talking about Pit Bulls. So I'm not a scientist. I couldn't really point to one breed over another, and I rely on the best advice and those kinds of things. But that's the issue there. It's really an issue of public safety. So, just as a dad, I wouldn't want to see somebody coming down the street with a loaded firearm, and I wouldn't want to see somebody coming down the street doing 120 kilometers an hour on the street that's, where this posted speed limit is 40 clicks. I wouldn't want to see a dangerous animal come down the street. So that's really what motivates those kinds of things. But I understand the attachment.
As a veterinarian, I see lots of breeds, and I guess my biggest concern as a veterinarian is there are times when I see lots of Pit Bulls that are very lovely and innocent, and so they're muzzled. That doesn't bother me as much as the times when I see, for instance, a mixed breed dog that has no Pit Bull in them at all, and I consider them a danger to society, and I feel a little bit helpless not being able to say, you know what, I see your dog who's lunging for me right now as a danger to society. I don't feel the power that I can, as someone who's dealt with animal behavior for 20 years, to be able to say, you know what, I think your dog is dangerous, and I'd like to enforce a muzzle law. So where do we, and this dog is not a Pit Bull, I'm thinking of one particular situation where I saw this really mean dog and then this lovely Pit Bull afterwards, and it sort of struck a chord in me, and I thought, what could I do about this nasty dog to ensure that? I was worried there might be a kid out in the waiting room.
Would the government ever consider having, veterinarians
being able to assess dogs?
Being able to assess and say, these individual dogs could be, a risk.
I've never thought of that, but I think one of the things that we need to do is just to find a way to impress upon owners that ultimately they've got to take responsibility for these kinds of things. And your pet will, it's almost impossible not to have a pet at some point in its life interact with other people and with other pets. And when that interaction takes place, if there are negative consequences, you, the owner, should be able to, I think in most cases, Dr. Mike, you would have better judgment on this, be able to predict and anticipate right, on the basis of, you know, the behavior of your dog. Right? And if you know the kinds of things that your dog does, and if they can be dangerous things, then that's the kind of thing that, you know, you've got to take responsibility for.
I mean, that's all I'm looking for is responsible pet owners that understand what their dogs are going to do. They're fairly predictable in certain situations.
With the joy of, you know, everything is kind of balanced, right? With the joy and the real pleasure that is associated with being a pet owner comes responsibility on the other side of it, right? That responsibility not only includes providing care for your pet, but also anticipating and understanding your dog's interaction with the rest of the world and making sure you're taking necessary steps to not to endanger or to put anybody else at risk. It's just, you know, in the old days you call that common sense.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd still call it common sense, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Aaron calls it common sense. In a recent poll in the 24-Hour magazine, it said that 60% of people in Toronto oppose the Pitt Bull ban. Now, is this something that maybe your government is maybe looking to reevaluate at any certain point to look at?
No, we've taken a step. You know, we got the best advice that we could, and I understand there is some scientific debate about you know, how precisely you define the genetic coding for the Pitt Bull. And Dr. Mike here raises a really important issue. So what about all the other dogs, which may not just be the result, you know, Pit Bulls were bred for aggressivity, right? That's, we people began to tinker. But there are other dogs who, as a result of bad experiences, right, can end up being, you know, just, you know, kind of damaged psychologically, and as a result become dangerous. But on the basis of all the information that we had, we thought this was, it served the public interest. That's why we did it. We're not going to back away from that. But beyond that, what I would encourage all pet owners to do is to make sure they're striking an appropriate balance. You know, owning a pet is one heck of a lot of fun. They give so much to us. They ask for so little in return. But we've got to provide them with that proper care, and we've got to anticipate their behavior and make sure we're taking appropriate and responsible actions to make sure everybody around your pet is safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a couple of emails from a paper that we write for as well.
Sure.
And Mike is going to read you one.
So this question is from Sherry Scott, and I think what she is getting to is that one of the dogs that was banned is one of her dogs, which is a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. And that's a little dog that sort of is in the same, I guess, family. And yet, if you go look in the literature, it's one of the only two dogs that is good with children in their breed description. And of course, her dog is a wonderful dog. So, you know, I guess she's concerned about why her Staffordshire Bull Terrier is included in that classification of pit bulls.
Well, I can't speak to the specifics of it,
Okay.
Mike, because I'm not an expert. But the law does provide some guidance, right, for people to speak to these kinds of issues, and for, you know, if it's brought to a court, for a judge to help make a decision. Again, we're trying to strike a balance here.
Right.
We only wade into this reluctantly, and there was just another. I think it was last weekend I read about another child being bitten in the face by a dog. I'm not sure we can ever do everything we need to do to prevent those kinds of things from happening.
Right.
Although we'd love to be able to do that. But the best advice that we had from dog owners, dog lovers, dog experts alike was that we should try as hard as it is to lend some definition to a particular breed or type and put some restrictions on that dog. And we tried to do it in a way where we didn't unduly interfere with freedom. So we're talking about a muzzle here, you know. So we're not saying that, you know, you've got to do something beyond that.